Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie from AAG.
I'm Leon from AAG.
So we've decided to put a bit of a series together to really start talking about kind of AI and automation. I think it's one of the things that we see that when we go in to talk to customers, that actually there's a real misconception around what AI and automation is. I think what the difference is between the two. And I think, I don't know what you'd say, Leon, but I think most people get AI confused with automation, and trying to distinguish between what each is typically where most conversations start when I'm talking to businesses. Do you kind of see the same thing?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people tend to kind of tie AI and automation together, but in fact, they are two different things that can work in tandem together. So AI is this idea that you can put intelligence behind things, but automation is where you take sort of stateless or stateful workflows. So you can transform A into B, but with AI, it's when you put intelligence behind it. So as a matter of fact, most businesses actually need automation rather than AI, but some will need a combination of both. So if you've already got a documented process that you know you need to do A to B to C, that could be solved with automation. But if you need some intelligence behind it, if you need some reporting behind it, etc., that's where AI comes in to give you some intelligence on that.
I think it's probably useful to kind of take a little step back of the journey that most people have been on, because I think, again, when I talk to people about AI, they assume really talking about ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot, and I think dependent on the journey that some people have been on, I think probably about 2 years ago, Copilot became available for most kind of small to medium businesses. It was available for enterprise probably just under 12 months before that. And I think it promised to be this magic wand, I suppose is probably the best way to describe it. Everyone thought, okay, we've got this AI thing, it's going to be amazing. And we all bought some Copilot licenses, and me personally kind of went, oh,
is that it?
Is that it? Because particularly when you start talking to people, people got really excited about using Copilot in Excel, and the people that got excited about it were the people that knew how to use Excel. So suddenly they were using a tool that went, well, it was quicker to do it the way I knew how to do it. I think there were some advantages to people who had no idea how to use Excel to start with, and to do some of the basics that kind of sit in there. So those kind of semi-advanced functions that sat around it. But I think overarching, we kind of got this new tool. Everybody got really excited about it, and then it kind of petered off. And I think, and again, interested in your feedback to this, is that I think what most people didn't realize is that we as MSPs, as IT providers, got our hands on this technology at the same point as everybody else. So we've all gone through a learning curve. We've all kind of had to learn how to prompt, to Google for a long time, and we type a question to Google, but actually even being able to prompt is an art in itself.
Yeah, well, there are job adverts out there for prompt engineers. So people who know how to prompt AI exactly to get the output they desire. And that's another major difference between AI and automation is when you ask AI, ChatGPT, Claude to do something, you don't always get the same output. So if you ask the same question like 100 times, you tend to get a different output every time. That's another major difference between AI and automation, in that with automation, you can at least have a standardized output. Whereas with AI, it tends to be slightly different every time, unless you put some guardrails around it and you have that exact prompt to output exactly as you do. And even then, it's not 100% all the time. So in some cases, automation will be better than AI for that task.
I think the other thing that, again, going on the journey of people starting to use AI, before we kind of get into the more advanced stuff of some of the things that we're doing with customers now, not necessarily using the tools that we're talking about immediately, is actually how it's got to learn. A bit like a new employee, a bit like a new member of staff. They don't know everything straight away. They don't know about the business. They may have done the theory of their exams, and they know the kind of practical aspect that I know from when I did my kind of Microsoft training back in the days. You learn kind of the enterprise world of doing things, and you learn the kind of perhaps the way that things should or could be done, but in the real world, it's slightly different. So when I've been, and I start talking as if I talk to my AI, I literally do these days.
Your therapist.
Absolutely. But it's had to learn me. The more information that I've given it, it's had to learn about the business. It's had to learn about what we do. It's had to learn about how we market the business, our products and services, the technical detail that sits behind that, all sorts of different things. And what I've found on my personal journey with the likes of Copilot and ChatGPT is the first month you kind of looked at it and went, you can tell it's AI. And the first thing that people always say to me is, well, you can tell that's been written in AI.
There's all about dashes.
And there's emojis and everything else that kind of sits in there and all that kind of stuff. But that first reaction is, well, it's really obvious that's written in AI. I challenge anybody now with the stuff that I get out of the AI tool that I use to tell me that was written in AI, because it's now really personalized. It really knows about the business. It really knows about our products and services. And, I'm able to kind of put things across and produce stuff incredibly quickly that would have taken me days to do previously, that now probably takes me 20 minutes, half an hour. But it takes time. You've got to persevere with it. You've got to train it. You've got to treat it like a new member of staff that sits there, and it's got to learn about the business. Then you get great results. Have you kind of seen that, where people have kind of tried it, seen I'm going to say the standard guff that comes out, but you get that generic output from those tools, and so people kind of get disengaged with it quite quickly? Has that been your experience?
Yeah, the way I think about it is kind of like a bell curve. I don't know if you've seen a sort of a bell curve where it sort of starts low and then goes up to the top and then goes back down again. You've got people at one end of the spectrum that say, oh my God, AI is fantastic. And then you've got a chunk in the middle that says, oh, it's rubbish. And then at the other end, you've got, oh my God, AI, it's fantastic. Because the people on one end of the spectrum will know how to use it properly, how to prompt correctly, how to use it. And the other end of the spectrum are perhaps using it for knowledge they didn't have. So they tend to trust everything it says. And the people in the middle that do have a bit of knowledge are like, well, that's wrong, so it's useless. But it's not. It's not. If you get the prompts right, if you get the guardrails right, you can get the output that you want from it. So I think realistically, a lot of people are seeing it and saying, oh, it does this wrong, it does that wrong, and then give up on it straight away.
I think prompting's the key there, though, isn't it? Yeah. Because again, and I even see this now with people, and I've seen it internally with engineers using AI tool, and in theory they're technical people, but because we've been brought up Googling, so we type a line in, we Google something, we can't use AI in the same way as we do a Google search. You've got to do the search in a way of, and the analogy I try to give to people when I talk to them about this is treat it like an apprentice. So if you were going to give an apprentice a task to do, would you say, just go and do that task? They might go and do it, but they'll probably do it wrong.
Well, it's a whole garbage in, garbage out, isn't it? If you put rubbish into it, you're going to get rubbish out. So you need to really perfect that prompt initially to get the quality results that you want, that you're after.
That's the thing. It's kind of, giving the instruction, giving context, giving it all the parameters that kind of sit around that. And sometimes I'm writing prompts that, real full pages of information that kind of sit there, but I get a really quality output off the back of it. So the more time and effort, you can't be lazy in terms of prompting if you want really good quality results.
Yeah, it don't even have to be complex prompts. So in your initial prompt, when you ask it a question, if you just say, use UK English, don't use emojis, don't use M dashes, and then you'll get a decent response that you can then tailor.
You are using a proper cheat code there now, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, I know. It's a cheat code, there you go. If you want it not to look like AI, then just ask it those three things.
Right, okay. So what I would say then is, so the journey that we've all gone on with this over the last couple of years, there's the bit of what we've been talking about of kind of the basics of using the likes of ChatGPT and Copilot. I think where we've evolved to, and where we'll kind of start talking about on here is actually how that's evolved into ultimately business outcomes. And now we're not necessarily talking about we're using similar technology, but when we go into businesses and talk to them about how their business operates, sitting down with their teams and looking at their business processes, these aren't technical conversations. I'm assuming it's the same for you. That what we're able to now do is kind of go, right, if there's a process that you do in a business, and I kind of phrase it, that you can describe it to somebody, that this is what you do, this is how you do it, this is what should happen, and these should be the outcomes or the output of that particular process. I think in virtually every scenario, we're now able to create an automation with AI bolted into that, where it's right and appropriate, to streamline those processes. So, and I think the thing for me there is, I've worked in IT for 20 odd years, and you've always kind of spoke about return on investment for IT, and it's always been a bit loose. You know, if somebody says, you know, if I spend 20 grand on upgrading my IT infrastructure, am I going to be more productive as a business? Yeah, you probably will be, because it'll be a little bit faster. But it's not really tangible.
Yeah, you can't prove it in a measurable way.
But that's where it's changed.
Yes.
You know, this is what we're now seeing, is using these tools. We go and talk to people, we go and look at their business process, and we can tangibly go, this thing that takes you 8 hours to do a week, or takes you, you know, combined 30 hours done by a team within the business, by implementing this process, this automation, this use of AI, it can now be done in 1 or 2 hours, or 5 hours, whatever it may be, but there's a tangible return that sits there. And I think that's been quite eye-opening for a lot of people. And I think when you look at business owners, they know they can work smarter. They've got lots of people that work really hard, and they've got lots of really skilled people within their businesses. But we want them working smarter. We don't want them doing that admin stuff. We don't want them doing that process-oriented stuff. We want them using their skills that will ultimately deliver to the bottom line, because, you know, that's why.
Well, an analogy I like using, I went to go and see a client in Chesterfield not too long ago, and the analogy I said to them is, we need to start to look at your processes to automate, or where smart, use AI to help with them. And I gave them an example. I said, you've got graphic designers on your team. What you don't want your graphic designers doing is spending 8, 10, 12 hours a week doing admin heavy tasks. You want them to do graphic design, because that's their skill. That's what you pay them for. So if they're spending most of their time doing graphic design, that returns to the bottom line, because they're doing things that generate value for you as a business. So with AI and automation in their job, you can remove any admin heavy tasks, communication. For example, if they've done a piece of graphic design work and they click done or send or whatever, it then fires off to the appropriate workflows for approvals or to the other teams, without the graphic designer having to type up an email or manually move it to a SharePoint folder, etc. So that will really, really return on the bottom line, that one.
And the thing is, in that scenario, what you're talking about is they can now get more work through that department.
So
they can bring on more customers, and they haven't got to recruit more people.
Exactly. Yeah.
So whilst we talk about the efficiency aspect of it, you know, the biggest overhead for virtually every single business is recruitment costs and overhead of wages and everything else that sits there. So, you know, it's a really good example of actually we're driving the efficiency that sits there, but ultimately we're using that skill to deliver that output to their customers, and we can get more of it through the sausage machine.
Yeah. More work can go through the same amount of people, and it's not like you're saying graphic designers to do 10-hour days, 12-hour days. They're still doing 8-hour days. They still have the healthy work-life balance. It's just their time in the office, them 8 hours, are now focused on graphic design.
But it's the stuff they like doing.
And it's the stuff they enjoy doing, yeah. Otherwise, they probably won't be graphic designers, I assume.
But again, I think that's quite a common thing that I see as well, is you kind of, you know, we kind of go in and run those working groups with our clients. So we'll get people come in and sit around a table like this, and they think it's going to be a technical conversation. They think because AAG are in or their IT team are in, it's going to be techie, and I don't know anything about IT that sits there. But we kind of say, look, we're not here to talk to you technically. All we want you to do is to talk about your job. You know, tell us what you do, tell us how you do it. And going back into those examples, and the one you're talking about there is the one thing that's fairly consistent in any of those meetings, whether it's graphic designers, whether it's finance teams, whether it's customer service people, etc., is they hate doing that admin processy stuff. They like doing the stuff that they were trained to do. They like talking to customers. They like engaging and doing that kind of face-to-face stuff and spending more time interacting. They like spending more time designing. They spend more time analysing data in the finance team rather than inputting invoices and chasing emails and chasing approvals, that frustrating stuff that is just frustrating because you're just chasing things around, and we can kind of get the tools doing that.
Oh, so it's another automation that we put in a number of clients, and it's probably applicable to many, if not all, businesses out there, and automated invoice processing. So, this idea that you get an email in with a supplier invoice, you have AI or an automation trigger. It reads the invoice using usually OCR, object content recognition, to analyze that and sent to the right place. It can be passed on for approval workflows if needed, so you can have that human in the middle, so that it's not all AI and automation that's processing these invoices, because it is financial. You need a man in the middle to make sure the data's correct, the payment's correct, etc. So a number of businesses we put that in at have seen a team of, let's say, 8 finance people go down to a team of 2, and not to get rid of those people, but they can then focus on other more important tasks that can again deliver to that bottom line.
In my life, so in my career of working within IT, I've seen how this stuff has evolved as well. And I think there's, again, a common thing that I come across is people are a little bit put off because they've tried doing this in the past. So I remember, I won't name the product. I don't think even whether it still exists anymore, but put in a invoice scanning solution into a finance team, and I'm probably going back 15 years ago, and you could do this back then. You could scan in an invoice and you could get it to capture that information off the back of it, and you could get it to automatically put it into the finance system and do the things that we're talking about. The problem was it was as flaky as every single invoice that came in, you had to set it up. So for every single supplier, you had to set up the template of that invoice, that the account numbers here, the invoice totals here, here's the line items, and you had to draw boxes around and set everything up precisely. And guess what? When somebody scanned that document in, it was slightly skewed and it went outside the box. It didn't work. And so people got, the theory behind it was great.
Could end up costing more in the long run. Yeah.
The frustration when, you put things in and they don't work, it becomes incredibly painful. Fast forward now, and incredibly expensive to buy that software back then. Fast forward to where we are now, and the solutions that we've put in are kind of going, right, does the same thing, but it works. And we haven't got to set up all these templates and layouts and configure these invoices. It goes, yeah, that looks like an invoice. Okay, I can figure out what all this stuff is. I've extracted all the data from that document. Here's a validation check screen. So here's the original. Here's what I've seen. You happy with that? Yeah, because it does it now. It very rarely does it get it wrong. Not going to say 100% of the time, but probably 99% of the time it's really accurate. Now all you've got your person just going, yeah, approve, happy with that. Pumps into the finance system, sends the emails off, does all the chasing for you. So if they don't reply and approve that invoice, it's going to nag them. And if they still don't respond, it'll automatically elevate it within the business. And guess what? Next time you come back there, it's approved, ready to pay, and I can process it, and it's done. That's been revolutionary for some, but not difficult. No. And I think people think that this stuff is like it was back in the day, that it's difficult to put in, it's complex, it's time-consuming, it's a massive project, which I think is one of the other things that puts people off because everyone's busy. But I don't know how you find it, that actually implementing these things is not as invasive as it essentially was either.
No, so the good thing about AI is that it doesn't require you to revolutionize your systems. So you can effectively plug it in to places where it makes sense and it will work. And compared to 15, 20 years ago, when you had these solutions, when you had to template it, you had to set it right, you had to make sure the corners were all correct, but AI is very forgiving in that you can give it a wonky document, it can have a smudge at the top, and if you zoomed in enough, you can just about make out the number, and AI will still make out that number. But it's intelligent enough, as long as you put the guardrails in place, obviously, to say, I'm not quite sure on this document, it needs a human to review. Whereas if you 15, 20 years ago, if you did that with the old systems and the old templates and whatnot, if it wasn't sure, it would either refuse to do anything or process it incorrectly. But now there's that intelligence behind it that it can say, I'm not sure about this one, I'll flag it. I'll flag it for review. So instead of having automation, you input A, it outputs B. That's how it was 15, 20 years ago. Now you can input A wonky, sideways, back to front, and still get your output. And if you don't get the output, it's intelligent enough to say, I'm not sure about this, I'll flag it.
Okay, so let's just wrap it up there for now. Let's have a little break, and we'll come back for part 2.
Yep, sounds good.